It's Tuesday, the 26th of the 8th, 2025. That means, as always, there are very many F1-centric threads at which we need to pull. Brett, Red, Max, in the first instance, we'll talk about rule changes in real time, that potentially they're looking to increase the speed limit in the pit lane as soon as this race weekend. What are we doing? What does that mean? They've already been tinkering in season as far as the compound, skipping one, C1, C3, C4, you'll recall. But why do this now? 60 to 80 kilometers per hour in the pit lane, some are saying. So too, we'll talk about why Motorsport magazine, one of the die-hardiest publications in all of F1, are talking about this season being boring. So too, we'll talk about Checo Perez announcement pending, breaking news settings that he will be a Cadillac F1 driver alongside Valtteri Bottas as at 2026. What does this mean? In the first instance though, chat, this is going to get techie. Dutch pit stops. 60 to 80 kilometers per hour. Why would they do this? Well, of course, it's to make the racing more interesting, make the two-stop more viable by dint of the reduced lap time that you will lose by doing 2 pit stops. But why now? Why all of a sudden? Is this FI doing in perpetuity what they've always done, which is, of course, throwing the regulatory dartboard at the darts? In the weekend, we're only a couple of days away. What are you talking about? The FIA and the F1 community has done one of these. On one side, it's like, listen, you've got to tinker. Surely you've got to iterate for processes to happen upon something that will provide for interesting, sexy, exciting races. On the other hand, die-hard F1 purists are saying, well, why now? What are you doing? We're 5 days away from the Dutch Grand Prix and only now you've just managed to think of this. What are you doing, Formula One? This is nonsense, and it's not for the first time this year. You'll recall they've started skipping compounds. Normally it's sequential. C1, C2 and C3 is what Pirelli will bring. Now, with a view again to make the racing more interesting, they've started skipping C1, C3, C4. Why? This just feels like a scattergun approach, but again, colour me naive, what else would you expect from the god-tier ineptitude that so engenders the weird and wacky world that is the one that and particularly the regulatory body that is the FIA. Mohammed Ben Salam settings. Yeah, you go and get re-elected, sir. Do you know what I mean? You've earned it. Oh, and by the way, this is important, chat. This is the reason why these guys are messing about with this. And I know that the F1, the results as far as the financial statements and the attention dollars globally, as far as who is watching Formula One, is doing one of these. 40% of all people that watch F1 have come into the sport by dint of F1. Netflix's Drive to Survive. That more women are watching, more of the haloed 18 to 35-year-old demographic, you know, them ones that spend money. F1 therefore is on the up and up. However, you best believe that you need yourself a god tier half 2 of 2025 if indeed you're going to build on that. When you see Motorsport magazine, for the avoidance of doubt, all F1 publications are created equal, but some are created more equal than others. And when you see Motorsport magazine, as diehard as they are, talking about this season potentially being boring, then you know, Houston, we have a problem. That's why you see this pit stop stuff happening, 60 to 80 kilometers, and non-sequential tyre compounds being brought. James Elson of Motorsport magazine, he reminisces on days gone by when there were proper fire-breathing dragons on track and therefore rivalry and stakes. He says that Senna, Prost back in the day, it was Hunt and Lauda, it was Mansell and Piquet, it was even Alonso and Hamilton in 2007. But the difference between now and then is that Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris are far too polite. It's United colours of Benetton. It's all very altruistic and philanthropic. After you, Claude, yeah, they came together at Canada. But what's happened since then? A couple near misses. Well, they're going to have to ramp it up, aren't they, in H2 if they want to deliver upon the not insubstantial promise that was Drive to Survive. Of course, every season can't be 2021. There is seasonal variances. But this, ladies and gentlemen, if F1, Liberty Media and the commercial arm want to continue building and growing into growth markets. This, what we've seen, is not good enough. And again, if we have this conversation under the umbrella heading of what's come before in Formula One as far as Titanic battles, then this is techie. OJP and Lando just isn't giving, as the kids say. Back in the day, the drivers weren't averse to coming out and dropping a killer soundbite. As far as Prost was concerned, he said, you'll recall, quote, Ayrton has a small problem. He thinks that he can't kill himself, and that's very dangerous. You cannot get more techie than that. Mansell said PK back in the day when he was having his argy-bargy with Nigel. He's argumentative, he's rude, and he's got a really ugly wife. Can you spell un-PC? I'm employed. In stark contrast, this is how Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri talk. Lando in the first instance says, I'm employed by the team, quote, and I have to drive and race for them. What are we doing? This is nonsense. United Colours of Benetton, philanthropic settings after you, Claude. I concur with this James Elson of Motorsport magazine fella. It's far too nice. It's far too PC. It's far too after you, Claude. These guys need to realise, that sometimes there is a tax to be paid, and that might mean not being the nicest of guys, not being a team player, not being a nice guys. For if past this prologue, nice guys have a tendency to finish last. James Elson bookends his article this way. Things might build up between OJP and Lando Norris, aka Dustin from Stranger Things, as the second half of the season gets underway, as the realization hits the papaya coloured drivers that this might be their only chance to be world champion. They both will start to race accordingly, therefore, with more on track clashes ensuing. Without that needle, however, argues Elson, without that bite, it's going to be a very quiet end to the season, and a very poor one as far as the commercial rights holders' financial statements are concerned. Viewing figures as they negotiate in real time, 140 million with Apple TV. One driver, continues Elson, will finish slightly ahead of the other, and that will be it. 2025 World Championship over, passing without a note. As things stand, the current F1 title fight is all just a bit boring. This is Motorsport magazine talking boring, and I concur, sir. It's wanted for something, and that something is, of course, needle and bite. F1 has always been chariots of fire, and listen, I don't want to sound like the old dude waving his stick at the moon. I desperately don't want to do that. But in this situation, I think it is apropos. Oh, and by the way, got to talk about Checo Perez, because apparently, per Autosport, per Luis Ramirez of Autosport.com, there is an announcement coming imminently, potentially before the Dutch Grand Prix, around Checo Perez and Valtteri Bottas. The both of them will be announced as the driver pairing for Cadillac F1. This is techie for a couple different reasons, though. But people are already starting to call into question, under the umbrella heading of a boring season, whether this is too boring a choice. Valtteri Bottas is, of course, a stable, capable pair of hands as far as his ability to drive an F1 car. Checo Perez too. Okay, so he fell off towards the end of his Red Bull racing tenure, but yet and still comes with 20 to 30 million US dollars by dint of his Carlos Slim sponsorship. I get it, but that's to say that there are young, hungry drivers. Mention no name Teo Porsche, mention no names Felipe Drugovich, mention no names Alex Palou, who have yet to get their opportunity to seize victory from the Jules No Mores of F1 defeat. Alex Palou, before I go on to this Checo Perez thing, I'll tell you about Alex Palou. There's a brand new rumour, and again, word on the F1 curb, conjecture and speculation. If that's something that you're invested in, then some people are saying, that Red Bull Racing are sniffing around four-time IndyCar champion Alex Palou. This is techie chat. Now, I don't think Alex will do this, but can you imagine how blockbuster this is? If you are promoting rivalries cross-discipline, then again, an F1, a rising stakes tide floats all F1 boats. But again, Red Bull, the noise coming out from them and the Helmut Marko is that they want to promote current F2 driver Arvid Lindblad, that he is the next one. And but for him, with that being said, there's no space at the Red Bull Racing Inn for the one they call Alex Palou. Oh, and by the way, before we talk about this Checo Perez thing, I know I'm dotting around. This is important. Stake Kick F1 team. They arrive at the Dutch Grand Prix and their name will change. This is nomenclature, naming conventions, nominal value only. But they are the title sponsor. Stake. But around certain territories, it is illegal to advertise betting, gambling. It will be removed for the Dutch Grand Prix. But here's the techier than techie thing. What needs to be removed, as at the time of writing, isn't the stake thing, it's the Kick thing. Kick is a streaming platform just like Twitch or YouTube even. In that sense, you don't want your streamers to be bringing the Kick name into disrepute. Here's what's happened, chat. Over the past, I want to say, week or so, Rampage Jackson's son has nearly unalived a wrestler at the altar of wrestling and kayfabe. What? And then in the second instance, there's been a streamer who has actually unalived himself, a Kick streamer. And you're telling me in the weird and wacky world of F1 that likes to be clean and buttoned up, that Stake Kick Sauber F1 team, that they're going to rock up with Kick emblazoned all over their F1 car on the back of those activities over the past couple of weeks? They better not. They better not, especially if F1 and Stefano Domenicali are paying attention. They can't be associated with their goings on. Oh, and by the way, let's talk about Checo Perez, who's around third base. Autosport is saying that he will be announced very soon, but is it too boring? Checo Perez and Valtteri Bottas, again, under the umbrella heading of the 2025 season. Could you give us more boring than that? It should be Felipe, at least one of those, surely. I understand why they do it, because they can't afford that. F1 is no place for stewardship and apprenticeships, but yet and still, bloody Nora. Bottas and Checo Perez, the battle of the number twos in 2021. Yeah, for F1 diehards and purists, grey-bearded vets. Finally, we'll get to find out the question, that is, which one of those drivers was the best? Some say that Checo in 2021 had the whip hand by dint of his ability to soap in clutch times, be instrumental in deciding which way the championship trophy of the drivers' variety went. Some say that Valtteri Bottas, by dint of his ability on occasion to out-qualify and outrace Sir Lewis Hamilton as a 7-time champion, GOAT settings, Mount Rushmore of F1, that by dint of the aforementioned, it's got to be Valtteri Bottas. Well, next year we'll get to see. And, oh, by the way, there are leaked details about this fella's contract. Now, you know already that they like to say multi-year deal. What does that mean? Well, it could mean anything. It could mean a 1+1, a 1-year basic with an option to increase. Could mean a 2-year plus 1 year. This, however, per Autosport, is said to be a 2+1. They write, one key point of the discussion was the length of the 35-year-old Checo Perez's contract, and now it's understood that Checo Perez has accepted a multi-year deal covering at least 2 seasons with an option for a third. Hang on, he's going to be about 700 years old then, racing at Cadillac F1. They have bottlenecked, sandwiched, hamstrung the racing career by extension of a young, hungry, fire-breathing F1 peddler. By extension. This article continues, this provides for some continuity after what is expected to be a tough debut campaign for F1's 11th team on the grid from next season. It is understood that both Checo and Valtteri Bottas, it will be announced later this week, will have equal status in the squad. Checo is expected to be presented imminently following, or allowing even, the Mexican to plug into the team's 2026 preparations straight away and work with Cadillac F1 engineers at the brand new Silverstone headquarters. In closing, I will say this. If we'd had this conversation 12 months ago and you'd tell me that we would kick off the 2026 season sans Christian Horner, but with Checo Perez, I would have said, what are you smoking? TWM, this is chaos. I think Christian Horner, expect him to be on the grid at some point in the not too distant future, because that's a juxtaposition, no, a contradiction in terms. An F1 in 2026 that doesn't have a Christian Horner, but that does have a Checo Perez. Chaos, ladies and gentlemen. Some say that that would be techier than techie things. What are we doing?